If you're a long-term subscriber, you'll have probably seen those clips before. If you're a new subscriber, then I've saved you the job looking through the archives. So this video wasn't planned. It was inspired by a conversation the other day with a lady client, and it made me the subject that we touched on was dangerous trees, and it made me ask a few questions myself on it. So I wanted to put those questions to the people that watch the video, and get your opinion on it, because it's a, I'm not asking what to do, don't get me wrong, but I think it's a discussion I can't believe I haven't had. I've worked for over 150 different companies who used to get me in often to do hazard trees, danger trees, whatever you want to call them, or tricky trees or whatever. And I never had the conversation with them. I never asked the question. So to categorize what is a danger tree or a hazard tree, I suppose it's one that's imminently going to fail, or predictably going to fail, more likely than not, and presents like a very present or immediate danger to people or structures or whatever. You wouldn't call a tree dangerous that was in the middle of a forest miles away from anything or anybody, then nobody's ever going to go there. Just it might be imminently going to collapse, but who cares? So it's not dangerous, is it? It has to be dangerous. It has to be dangerous to somebody or something. So the subtitles in those clips that you saw, whether root decay or split or fractured or whatever it was that put before each sequence, would have been relative to those trees. I always remember what was wrong with the tree that I took down. I don't have all these random clips and look at them and think, why did I do that, or what was wrong with that tree. I remember everything very well, so and there's obviously more. I've got tons of archives, tons of dead trees, but I think from a videography point of view, you can't beat looking at stuff from great height, when you see the scale of some of them jobs. That's why I picked them and bunched them together anyway. So anyway, I'll just tell you the conversation that I had with the woman. I'll tell you exactly what happened. It was related to some work that I was doing on the Alberni highway there. The two clips of the two trees that I did in that day are within that sequence. One of the trees had split at the bottom, recently noticed, big leaner over the highway, and the other one had uprooted on one side and went from a straight up tree to having a lean on it. So when you went to the bottom of the tree, you could see kind of all the roots were exposed on one side, and it was leaning now. Didn't used to be, and it happened in a recent weather event. They get high winds in that valley and high rainfall as well. So what can happen is they get, they'll get a massive dumping of rain, and then the wind will blow through, and the load will blow down, and the huge trees. So they're forever in a state of paranoia, because it's actually a park there on the major highway. There is no way of avoiding it to get from town A to town B. So anyway, that was the situation. I got the call from the company who has the contract to do that work. They're a big company, 60 employees at least, but they're sort of spread out. And I got the call to go up and do some of the climbing. There was another subcontractor as well who I've mentioned before, Ryan Murphy, who also was drafted in to do the job. I had a walk around that morning to look at the trees that we had to do. There was the uprooting one that was lifted, that was about 180 foot. And then there was the one that was split going over the highway, that was about 230 foot maybe. And they had to be climbed and brought down in sections for one reason or another. So I'm stood there with the manager, Matt, really nice lad, and he's showing me. Ryan's tree was over there. Ryan's, I don't think, was as hazardous, but it was trickier because I can't remember why it was coming down, but it was coming down, but it was well over 200 foot, and we don't carry 400 foot rigging lines, but it had to be rigged. Some of the canopy had to be rigged, so he would have to rig that himself up in the tree from A to B, and then dissect it in a net, the hanging suspended limbs in a part of the tree where they could then be dropped to the floor. He couldn't cut them directly, where they were reaching out, or they'd have smashed up all the boardwork. So that was kind of tricky and involved for him because he had to do it unassisted. And I was dealing with the ones that were, as I explained before, split and uprooting. So Matt took me and we looked at these two trees, and he said, he showed me the uprooting one, and he showed me the split one, and he said quite honestly, I don't want our lads getting up them trees, and can you do it? So he's putting it on me. He's not saying do it. He's not saying he wants me to do it, but he's asking, can you do it? Do you feel safe doing it? And I said, yeah. I think if things stay as they are, the conditions stay as they are, if I cut it in a certain way, like not too big, not going to put any more force, unnecessary force or leverage on the compromised root system or the split on the other tree. If I can do that and the weather stays like this as it is, which was still at the time, it'll be alright. That's how I look at it. Now from his point of view, it's we both know what time it is. It's they have to look after their own, so he'd rather not ask one of his, can you do that? Because they'd probably say yeah. Some of them would, maybe some of them wouldn't. They'd probably say yeah. So the pressure on him would be enormous then. They don't know as much as me. Alright, they've not been in that position as many times as me. They may be really good climbers, but they don't have my experience. You put the most qualified person in the position to whatever that might be. And in this case, it was these two compromised trees, and they're massive. Like you're committed one. It's hard to bail out once you're up there. You sort of feel like you have to keep going. And these jobs take a lot of organisation as well. The main highway has to be shut periodically. Lots of people have to be brought in, flaggers, and they're doing blasting as well. It's a big operation. It's not like you can just call it a day, a half day, and because it's costing a massive amount of money for the parent company to do the job before they get paid. it's a very difficult decision to make when it's been arranged, for, I don't know how long it takes to arrange to get permission for the highway closure and arrange the flags and everything else, but it's a big commitment. So it's a safer bet for them to put me up there. Let me decide. If the worst comes to the worst and something happens to me, it's sort of, well, it was my decision. I'm a subcontractor. I'm the most qualified person for the job. My life was in my own hands. I wasn't pressured. I agreed to do it. It's a lot less mess to clean up if I get killed as opposed to one of theirs. I mean, it sounds, I don't know, it sounds like really cynical and maybe unethical, but it's we both know what time it is, and it doesn't matter. It was asked of me. I wasn't forced to do it, and I look at things sort of pretty logically like that, and I just look at the facts of the matter. I kind of rely a lot on my experience and intuition as to what I can get away with, and I look to that situation and it's like, yeah, I can do this. My only worry is that the weather changes. That's my only worry. But if it, ultimately, if it gets worse and worse, I can always get down, can't I? If I think I'm really in danger, I can get down, and I can apply that logic to any job, but you have to get up there at some point to find out. It's alright looking at things from the ground, you get up there and it can be different. You get a different feel for things, especially, with dead trees in particular. You have to get a feel for it to know what is possible and what is too risky. So that's how I look at things. I put one foot in front of the other, and I plan for, I have plan A, plan B, and whatever. And, worst case scenario, I get down. The only problem with the weather and wind, I don't care about snow, I don't care about rain, hail, anything like that. But the wind is troubling on trees like that have such a relatively small root system to this massive head that is so disproportionate to the root system, and trees go down there all the time in bad weather. Huge trees, 200-foot trees, but they just go over, and you're being asked to climb one now. So you do have to, how am I going to cut it with minimal disruption to what the root cause is, the root compromise of the tree. But the wind you have no control of, and we're in the middle of winter, and the valley is such a volatile place where it comes. We've been caught in windstorms there before, and the only safe place to stand was in the middle of the highway, so you could see what was likely to come your way. It was unbelievable. I wish I'd got that on video. I've never seen such big trees move such great distances, because they're so tall, and they're moving 40 feet. It's unbelievable, and unsurprisingly that they come down. But when you're climbing in the wind and you're that high up, and there is pressure on you to complete the job because of all the reasons I said before, because of the investment that's gone in to organise this job and the money that is going to be lost if you have to cancel or suddenly bail out. So you do feel pressure to carry on, and the pressure is always that, is the next gust going to be worse? Or is it going to be less? Is this the peak, or is this just the start of the storm? Do you know what I mean? So it's anyway, the lady said to me, I was telling her this story. I don't really talk to customers about stories, but sometimes you get the odd one that asks and is generally interested, and we sort of get into it. And somehow that, because she's used to drive that highway all the time into Claycourt Sound, so she's very familiar. She's a lawyer. And anyway, I told her this, and anyway, the job went all right. As you could see, I got done what I had to do. I got paid, and she said, "Well, I hope you charge them a lot of money." And I paused and thought, well, I said, well, not really, no. I said, not more than usual. I just charged them a day rate, like. And then I answered with something I can't really. What do I base the extra charge on? Is it higher levels of anxiety? It's kind of, it made me think, because I know some people do charge more for situations, and they don't have to be dead great big tall trees like that. They can be, like I'd rather cut a cedar, for example, a dead cedar that's 100 and odd feet, that's died from drought stress, than an 80-foot beech that's died from our malaria. It really does depend on you do have to do a bit of investigative work to find out why the route's not working anymore. Do you know what I mean? But I know people who do charge more for doing more dangerous trees. Yeah, I'm just a bit stuck with it. Like, I sort of feel like I should. I haven't been doing. Because in my thinking, you can either do something or you can't do it. And I never feel like I have to carry on if I find something unexpected up there, or a weather event occurs and it's now far more dangerous than it was an hour ago. I never feel sort of obliged to dice with death because of a change in circumstances, or a new reality has suddenly been realised, So again, I have this attitude, well, you can either do it or you can't do it. Like, what's the difference? How can I like, let's say I do it in an hour. Let's say I cut a dead tree in an hour. Was that worth more than a live tree the same size that I cut down in an hour? Was it worth more because it was dead? I wasn't forced to go up there. Either I know it's safe to do, or I don't. It's weird, but I know some people do charge more. I don't know how they do it though. I don't know what they say. Do they just sort of say it like, well, it's a dangerous tree, so Jared, a friend of mine, said this. I remember him saying this. He had to climb a load of dead grand firs, which he blitzed because he's a good climber, and he's been in forestry and tree work for years. He knows what he can get away with. And he said he charged a lot of money, and he said he told them it was a risk-based quote, not a time-based quote, and they accepted it like that. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but that's how that conversation went down. They didn't even question it. Yeah, fair enough, they're dead, they're worth more money, but are they? If you know what you're doing. I don't know. I mean, I charge more when I'm driving further to a job, or there's more chipping to do. Like, I have an idea of what I need to make in the day, and I'll charge more if I've got to drive an hour as opposed to 10 minutes, because it's fuel in the truck and it's time. Or if there's tons of chipping to do on some removals compared to a little bit chipping on some pruning, the chipper is a bit of a gas guzzle. It's an old Wisconsin engine, 68 horse, not very fuel efficient. It was a good old workhorse, but I do have to consider things like that. So yeah, it's that conversation with her. It made me think. I think, well, why have you, all the people you've worked for over the years, and I've been running my own tree service now as well for 6 years, and I'm still getting these jobs. Why have you never asked anybody how they've priced it, like, or what they think of? I don't know what they think. And I've got countless examples of it. You know, I wish I'd videoed the roots of that one that was lifting up, or took a picture, or the one with the split, so I could show you. But there's so many examples. There was a job, Martin Evans, and it was his job, big job. They get loads of big jobs. It was like a hillside. Part of it is actually on if you go back through the archives about 2 years ago, there's Hazardous Tree removals, or Hazard Tree Fall, no, Danger Tree Fall in 1 and 2. There's a part 1, part 2, and we're just falling massive trees on like a rocky bluff, cliffs and all that. Dangerous work, horrible trees to put your saw into. They're so unpredictable. But there was climbing involved as well. Now, one of the unfortunately, I did video this, but I foolishly had I didn't realise that the helmet camera the whole time was pointing down, so it caught the lid of my helmet, and with not much view it looked rubbish, so I deleted it. I was so annoyed with myself, but it does happen now and then, because I was focused on the job. It must have got knocked as I was on my way up, and I didn't realise, and it was pointing down. So you didn't get to see anything when I watched it back. But what it was, there was like a hemlock that grew out the side of the hill, or the cliff, or whatever you want to call it. It just kind of grew out the side at an angle on that, and went up, big hemlock, and around it there was a load of cedars that had sort of collapsed, and they were all set on hill, and they'd collapsed into it somehow. It was weird, but without completely breaking off. So they'd regrown, or they'd carried on functioning, you know, and put on new tissue, sat like that for ages. I don't know how long. The hemlock was intact, but it was sort of propping up all this other stuff, and it went higher. You know, now it was a falling job, so we'd try and avoid any climbing. But it was a terrible situation. Where do you start? These were huge trees. There's nowhere to run on these hillsides. You know, I mean, you can get a little bit away, but you really are gambling. And I've got so much respect for the fallers on the coast who have to deal with these situations, and all they've got is a saw and a pack of wedges, you know. But in this case, it was an oddball situation, and so these cedars were rotten, dead, dying. There was sort of 3 or 4 of them had fallen together, but this live hemlock kind of went through the middle and up, and was above them. So, but it was such a, you know, when they're rotten like that, you put a saw in them and they can just sink in your saw, and then where you're going to put them, you know, you can't just run away on a hill, a cliff like that, and they're all around you. You know what I mean? You have to be there, and you have to do it to understand just how lethal a situation is, especially when they're all rotten like that and the huge trees. So we looked at it and what have you, and you know, no doubt we would have. I don't know, to be honest. There was the option of blasting, I suppose, down the line, but if you can, blasting is expensive. We did blast some trees on that hill, but it was like, and I said, well, you know, I could climb up the hemlock and start from the top down, I'll try and release them from up there. And I'm looking, you know, and Marty's like, "Are you sure you want to do that?" And I thought, well, not really. No, I don't. It won't be very comfortable doing that, because the tree's already 100 feet. It's going to be feel like 200 feet hanging off the side of the cliff at an angle. And I don't know what's going to happen with these cedars when I pick away at them and then eventually release them. You know, it's when you see big trees falling underneath you directly, you know, it's not very nice to see and feel that much movement around you hanging off a tree the way, you know, a hemlock like that in particular. But I looked at it, I thought, well, I'll go up the hemlock first, I'll weave my way through the middle, I'll shorten the hemlock to firm it up a bit, take some of the leverage out of that, then I'll drop down and start cutting away at the cedars. But, you know, I'd rather not, but I know it's logical and rational. I know it'll work. My weight isn't going to make the hemlock tip over. Not after the winds it's withstood, but I've got to be very careful how the weights of everything shift as I start cutting on these other trees. You know, but so the first thing is to reduce the weight of the hemlock itself. Get straight up there, get to work, get it topped. You know, topping a leaning tree over a cliff on its own is not a nice feeling. You know, it's not. They move different than when they're in the soil, and when it's loaded, sprung like that, it's not nice. But anyway, I did it, and it only took. It was probably only up there an hour, and it all worked. It all worked out all right. Unfortunately, I didn't get any video, but if you look at, I did find some pictures, so if you look at the screen now, the first picture will show the hemlock. I'll put a red circle around, so have a look at that now. Okay, and now I've got an after picture of a couple of the cedars from that group, and you can see how rotten they are. Now there's a helmet to the left of the photo that if you zoom in on, I don't know if you can do that, you get a sense of scale, so have a look. Right, so again, that is a dangerous situation, but I can't say I need more money for this because I did that. I can't say afterwards I need more money. I can't say before, well, I'll do it if you give me more. But, you know, I mean, maybe some people do. I don't know. I'm just curious to know how you deal with this. Another example is one we did, Aaron and I went and did on one of the Gulf Islands recently. I got countless stories, but these are, I have to look at what I've got evidence of. This tree on the Gulf Islands. And it was a great big arbutus. Half of it was dead, some parts were alive, there's power lines underneath, there's an outhouse underneath. It's a huge thing with a huge leaning stem, and then it straightens up. There's a big dead piece at the back. It was hard to get a decent photo because it was because of the trees that were being retained that were sort of in the way. But I did get a couple of pictures. I'm going to put one up right now. Okay, and that was tricky, and I wondered, like, how did you? I thought, but I priced it very modestly because, you know, we looked at it I went to do the job without going to see it, because I thought, I'm not getting a ferry all the way to the Gulf Islands, committing to half a day's travelling to put a quote in and then maybe not get the job and get nothing. I've just wasted half a day. So I got a description from the fella. He sent me a couple of pictures which weren't very good, because it was so hard to get photos of the tree and get any sense of scale or size. So I agreed to go there with Aaron, and I give him a price for the day, and that didn't involve extra difficulties or complexities, or this didn't take into account the state of the tree or what was involved. I just said, well, it's going to cost this much for us to come, and we'll either be able to do it or we won't be able to do it, but that's what it'll be, that price. I'll tell you that now. We just need to be on that ferry back at such and such a time, and it meant getting a ferry. So you drive to the ferry terminal in Victoria, or at the Swartz Bay. No, it's not Swartz Bay. Is it Swartz Bay? I think it is. And you get to Galliano, and then you get another little boat to, I think it's Gossip Island is where it was. So anyway, we did that. We got there, and I looked at it and I thought, this is tricky. Like this is tricky, and this is not going to be pleasant. And my anxiety level is definitely going to go up at times, but as long as I, stick to my game plan, it'll work. There's going to be times when I'm going to feel my senses more heightened, I'm going to feel more internal tension. You know what I mean? As I'm releasing certain parts, I'm rigging certain parts. But the logic of it all is like, I've been in this boat. This was one of the trees I would liken this tree to some of the horrible dead eucalyptus that I'd encountered out in Australia when I was younger, much younger, 20, 21. It was as they do the same sort of thing. They go rock hard, and they're just arbutus. They're very similar trees, and this one had taken a similar form as well. No real good central tying point. They sort of splay out and go weird and bend. And anyway, it got done. Our plan worked, and we got paid and went home. But during that, I did speak to the fella, and a really nice guy, and I thought, well, it's unusual for me to work out this way on all these islands, and I said, how did you, or did you not get someone? Is there not local guys that work on the islands? Which I knew there was. There's a few tree service that work the Gulf Islands, and there's plenty of guys that look for work. They're based in Victoria, and they go to like Salt Spring Island and stuff like that. They go there to work. And I said, well, did you not think of getting some other quotes? And he said, oh yeah. He said we had 4 or 5. And I thought, oh right, so I'm not that privileged, am I really, if I was number 6 or what have you. And I said, how did that go? And he said, well, a few came and went. We couldn't get hold of them ever again. And he said, and there was others that just said flat out, we don't want the job. One guy even put I think he said $5,000 on it. Well, I would assume to price himself out, but was obviously so anxious about it, he even called back to say, look, forget the $5,000, I don't want the job. And then he got hold of mine, but he may have got hold of me through Aaron's wife, actually, because anyway, so I could have got more money for it, but I wasn't kind of delving into the unknown. it just wasn't going to be a comfortable job where I'm all relaxed and chilled out. So, but there was no unknowns there. Either you know what you're doing or you don't know what you're doing, and you've got to know when to draw the line. And like I say, sometimes you have to get up and get the feel of a tree. If there's not tons of pressure to complete the job, if there's not tons of people depending and relying on you on that day, that specific day or that week, then you know, what's stopping you getting down and just saying this isn't working, or we need a different approach, you know. So anyway, I could go on forever, but I'll put it to you now, because you know, I'd be interested to hear how you approach these situations. And it doesn't have to be a great big tree like that. Like I say, the tree can be much smaller. You don't have to fall far to die. You know, it's just that if you're a long way up, you have a bit more time to think about it as you're on your way down. But you know, I mean, look at Christopher Reeve, the Superman from the 80s and late 70s. He fell off 6 foot off a horse, was paralysed from the neck down, and then his body failed sometime after, and he died. You know, relatively young guy. So you don't have to fall far. But anyway, tell me what you think. Seriously, tell me what you think. I know it's a pain writing stuff down. It's easy for me, I can just talk. But, you know, I'd be interesting to know how people handle this situation. You know, if you think, you know, more compromised trees are actually worth more money. You know, they don't have to be huge. It just depends on the relative risk, you know, to undertaking the work. Alright, so I'll leave it at that. I finished early today because the job I had planned, one of the jobs I had planned this week, we put off because it's really hot. It's going to get hotter, and the fire hazard rating is way up there right now. It was a forest job I was going to do. I'm not going to risk it, so that's why I'm finishing early. And I had the thoughts to do this video based on the conversation I had with the lady, the lawyer, Anne, her name is. Alright, leave a comment, tell me what you think. Cheers.